Boy, we're live on Facebook now.
Morning, Zach. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent.
This is a lot of pressure.
You're going to do fine. You'll do fine.
You see, I'm representing you today.
I see that. I see that. All right, we're going to get started here. Good morning. I want to welcome everybody to the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Talk. Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? My name is Paul Clifford. I'm the CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone to the Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. Each week on Coffee Hour, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about where they want to go, and about how we, the network, can help them get there. That's what you can expect to hear. What can you expect to feel? You can expect to feel the pride, the power of the Penn State network, and that we are way of life that is part of the DNA of all Penn Staters. We are recording this session and we'll be editing it and sharing it with other Penn Staters in the hopes that they find value in the advice shared and the stories that are shared. The symbol of our best. We want the lion. Today, I'm joined by Zach Sowa, a member of Penn State's class of 2020, and the 52nd Nittany Lion. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're gonna have some fun over the next 40 minutes. So
I don't doubt it. We always do.
Absolutely. Let's start right at the very beginning. You know, the Nittany Lion is kind of like a superhero, right? You're a superhero in the costume and out of the costume. So tell us the superhero's origin story. How did you become a Penn Stater?
All right. So first of all, appreciate that compliment. That was giving me a little bit too much credit already. But okay, so original thing, how did I become a Penn Stater? Well, I was born. That's basically it. My parents went to Penn State. They actually met at Penn State. So I grew up going to games. No, we never had season tickets or anything, but we went to games frequently, and I loved it. Would always used to ask to go to a Penn State game for my birthday. And yeah, so I mean, I just grew up big Penn State fan. Ended up applying to colleges, got into Penn State. Weighed a few other options. There was a chance I wasn't going to go to Penn State, but I mean, heart really just pulled me in, made the decision to go to Penn State, and it was the best decision I made.
That's awesome. So you mentioned being from a Penn State family, right? Growing up, going to Penn State games as a kid. When did the Nittany Lion first catch your eye?
Oh, honestly, before I can remember.
Okay.
But yeah, the Nittany Lion's synonymous with my experience growing up. I always used to see the Nittany Lion and the cheerleaders and the football players, and I'd just think to myself, like, wow, like all of these people have like such cool lives. Like I can only imagine what it would be like to be a football player at Penn State, a cheerleader at Penn State, or the Nittany Lion. Like that dude's just larger than life. He, as you said, seems like a superhero. So yeah, I mean, just always grew up thinking of a lion as a superhero type character. And then when I found out around the time that I accepted to Penn State
Yeah.
that anybody could try out, I was like, hey, That sounds like a fun opportunity just to try out, and then
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit. Talk about when you learned about tryouts, and then like what the tryout was like, and how did you ultimately become the Nittany Lion? What does that process look like?
yeah. So during my so anybody can try out to be the Lion. Any current student at Penn State, anyway. Um, so yeah, I knew that I would have at least one opportunity in my career here at Penn State to try out, and that opportunity came a little bit faster than I expected. My freshman year, I went to club gymnastics, and I'm no gymnast by any means, but club gymnastics was just an opportunity for me to, I always say, try dumb stuff in a safe place.
Right.
So I would just throw my body in very unnatural ways and try to learn new tricks and whatnot. Um, and all of it was in kind of an effort to make myself better for when my tryout opportunity eventually came. Um, well, it turns out that during my spring semester of my freshman year, which that's typically when Lion tryouts are held in the spring, um, I had a buddy at club gymnastics like show me a tweet saying that there were going to be Lion tryouts coming up, and my heart just stopped. I was like, I'm not ready. um, but yeah, so my tryout ended up being in April. I mean, the tryout process. Sorry, there's 3 steps. First starts with an application, then an interview, and then an audition, and they can make cuts at any time. The application, they want to see that number one, you're a passionate Penn Stater. They want to see number two, you do well in school, because the workload of the Lion is immense, and if you aren't really on top of your game, it will very negatively affect you in other parts of your life. Um, so they want to make sure that you're on top of your game, and then um, finally, they want to see a little bit of creativity. They ask for a few ideas that you'd bring, some unique energy that you'd bring to the Lion. So then, if you get past that screening process, you get interviewed, and in that case, they want to see that you're, first of all, like, charismatic. They want to see your interpersonal skills, and they also want to see that you are, like, if you're selected to be the Nittany Lion, you are expected not only to represent the symbol of our best in costume, but also out of costume. So they really want to see what makes you you, and that's the interview process. They want to hear a little bit more about your creativity and your story and whatnot. But then if you make it through that, you get the audition, where you bring a prepared skit of 1.5 to 2 minutes. This is supposed to highlight whatever you bring to the table most. And then there's a minute improv. It's prop improv. You reach into a bag and pick a random object, and you have to fill a minute of time entertaining the crowd using that object as something that it's not. And then you have to do cowbell, because that rhythm is a lot harder than people think. And so, to anybody who has heard me mess up cowbell, which is probably anybody who has heard me play cowbell, I apologize. Anyway, yeah, and the final thing is the infamous 50 one-armed push-ups, which is the hardest thing to train for. I barely squeaked them out in my tryout, but luckily went well.
Yeah. 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 You know, you talked about coming to games as a kid and seeing those folks on the sideline, that the players, the cheerleaders, the Nittany Lion. Describe what it was like for you the first time you came through that tunnel.
Oh boy. First time I came through the tunnel would have been blue and white of my freshman year. And I would say um, more than anything, it was just like, I wasn't processing stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, it was down to a mission. I still didn't like grasp the fact that I was the lion and like that wasn't changing. Um, I felt like at any time they would realize that they didn't pick a superhero, and they'd be like, "Oh wait, no, we found somebody better." And like I knew realistically that wouldn't happen, but it was just like a subconscious thing that like I was always like worried that I wasn't gonna live up to this legendary character that the lion was. So yeah, I mean, it took a while for me to really just like settle in and enjoy things as opposed to worrying about um like what to do and like how to do it and whatnot. So yeah, my first time in the tunnel, it was kind of like overwhelming. It was just a lot of pressure, but luckily that did it subsided quicker than I expected. Um, because it was something that I quickly realized that there wasn't really such a thing as screwing up as a lion. Like the most, the biggest mistakes in my head
Right.
were irrelevant to fans because I mean a lot of them didn't even notice. So one of the most common questions is, "Do you ever get nervous?" And my answer is honestly really no, just because I know that no matter what I do,
Right.
the Penn State community has me supported better than like anything I could ever ask for. So yeah, like just if I mess up, rub the ears, people cheer. Like
Right.
it was an effortless performance that I could just settle down and have fun with.
That's great. This is the Penn State Alumni Association Coffee Hour. I'm Paul Clifford, and I'm joined by the 52nd Nittany Lion, Zach Sowa. Zach, I remember a conversation you and I had when we were in New York City on the coach's caravan. We went around the corner and got a bagel and had breakfast, and it was exactly what you were talking about. Like, um, can't believe, like, I'm waiting for people to like uncover that I shouldn't be the Nittany Lion and someone else should be, right? And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people struggle with those kind of thoughts in their day-to-day lives, right? It's the you and I talked about the 1 square foot of property between our ears, right? And
Hmm.
about how it's the self story that we tell ourselves that sometimes is the hardest thing to overcome than anything external. How did you work through that process?
So, I mean, to be honest, it was as it like slowly sank in that like it wasn't changing. Um, and it was through conversations like I had with you that I realized it wasn't uncommon. That people who were very successful through their whole lives had similar feelings, and that really just started to resonate with me, and it started to really bridge a divide between what I viewed as like normal people and outstanding people. Um, and it got to a point where like I didn't any longer view anybody differently. I don't know how to explain it, but
Right.
I mean in my time as the lion, I had the great fortune of meeting a lot of very famous people. Um, but by the end of it, it wasn't like it didn't feel much different meeting a famous person. Like it was cool to me, and it was something that I'd check off my bucket list, and I'd be very excited to meet them. But ultimately, when it came down to it, I met them and I saw them just as another person. I like obviously on a smaller scale, but I almost felt like I could relate with them on a few things.
Yep.
And that was something that I mean, growing up, I never thought I would be able to do. Like celebrities and whatnot, celebrities, extremely successful people, they always seemed so like far, like out of reach and just like a different breed. But what I came to realize is that everybody, I mean, we're all made of the same stuff.
Yeah.
As you said, like that that square foot of property in between the ears is it's there for everybody. So
Yeah. So,
Very interesting.
what's been most impressive, Zach, is in getting to know you. Certainly, you're one of the best lions ever, and I'm going to say that about the next lion and about the next
I
lion.
hope you do. I hope they get better and better and better so
That's
that
exactly right. But what's been most impressive has been to watch you kind of manage the whole responsibility of being the lion, right? You at Penn State, right? There's only one person who is the Nittany Lion. I worked at the University of Oregon, and there were multiple people who wore the suit at other institutions. It's like a committee of mascots, if you will, right? That help to staff all the events that they have to be at. But at Penn State, it's one, and that we know what that means. That's over like 400 events a year. How did you do it? How can one student get the grades that you get, right? Be a leader on campus and be fulfill all the responsibilities of being the Nittany Lion?
So I'll use two answers here. Both will be pretty short. Number one, priorities. You have to understand, like, you have to understand that you're here primarily for an education. So to answer, how do you keep grades up? Well, it's really just focusing on exactly that. So yeah, whenever Lion stuff would become overwhelming, I would have to really like take the stance and realize, like, I'd have to know myself and realize, hey, I can't actually handle this. In which case, I'm very thankful for my coach. He was very understanding, and I could tell him, hey, it's been a really rough week. This event, it's just at a really rough time. I need to be studying for an exam or something, and we would handle it. So yeah, it's really tough. Luckily, I very rarely had to do that, because I learned pretty quickly that I had to stay on top of things, or else I would fall behind very quickly, much like an avalanche. So yeah, it was, and that happened a couple times. But luckily, with a lot of help with the Morgan Academic Center and some professors that were understanding of my situation, I was able to regain my footing and get back on track and do well at it. So the second thing, though, passion. Passion is what fuels the intensity of work and effort that I put into everything, really. Because yeah, without that passion and intensity, even with priorities straight, it's near impossible to keep up with everything.
Absolutely. So I mentioned the 400 events annually. This year you danced at Thon, you interned at Boeing, you represented the Nittany Lion at the Hall of Fame inductions, you appeared in numerous commercials. So thinking back on your time at Penn State and all the amazing experiences that you've had, what's the one moment? What one moment stands out kind of vividly in your mind as your Penn State moment?
That's a tough question. My one moment. I mean, there are so many that I'll never forget. Um, but there's a bunch of interchangeable ones, but to give an answer, I'll relate it to my Thon story. But ultimately, what this story shows is how much the lion means, and it's the greatest thing about being a lion, which is the effortless ability to impact people.
You can talk about
So
Shiloh.
to go exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so to anybody who hasn't heard this story, um, at the Thon basketball game in, I believe, 2018. Forgive me if that date's wrong, but I did the basketball game as a lion and everything, and throughout that year, I had developed a strong relationship with the lionette's Thon child. Her name is Shiloh. Um, she was, I believe, 3 at the time, and she she just adored the lion, and it was the cutest thing. Um, and yeah, so I mean, my heart was so attached to this girl, um, but she never knew me. Neither did her parents. Um, but she was really impacting me just in how she treated the lion and being as sick as she was. Um, so after the game, I actually approached her parents. Her parents were talking to a lot of the lionettes, and I approached her parents and introduced myself and told them that I was the lion and that their daughter had such a profound impact on me. Um, and when I told them that, they first of all were shocked. They could not believe that I was telling them that. But I mean, I just needed to tell them how much their daughter was impacting me. Um, and the mom started to tear up and tell me this story that like all the time when Shiloh's resisting taking her medication for her illness, they would use the lion to convince her to do so. She would be very resistant, and they would tell her, "The lion will be very proud of you if you take it." And almost without fail, Shiloh would suck it up and say, "All right, I'll take it," and she'd take her medicine. And on that particular morning, um, she was particularly resistant, and to the point where she ran away inside the house, but ran away to hide because she didn't want to take her medicine. Um, but then the mother, Cindy, was just kind of like stressing, like not knowing what to do. And I believe it was like 20 minutes later, went over to where she left the medication for Shiloh, and it was gone. And then she turned and saw Shiloh, and Shiloh just lit up with what I imagine is the cutest smile ever, because her normal smile is adorable. Um, and she just looked up at her mom and said, "The lion's going to be so proud of me." And she did that because she knew she was going to see the lion later. And I mean, it's just unbelievable that the lion and his interactions with a little girl just a few times is enough to create what is potentially a life-saving impact. And yeah, I mean, it's just a really overwhelming feeling to know that at one point in my life I had that effect on people just because of something that I would wear.
Yeah, so let's dig into Thon a little bit. Um, Not only did you dance in Thon with your partner in crime, Eric Gaspich, but you also broke a fundraising record for an independent dancer couple. Over 50,000. I think the official number is like 48,000, but by the end of the day, I think it was over $50,000 raised. Talk about your experience and not only raising that money, but then dancing for 46 and doing probably 30, well, 25 of those hours as the Nittany Lion.
So there are a couple things here. Number one, I'm not sure that it ended up being a record. We'll have to check with Regina on that. Um, but anyway,
Well, don't let
yeah,
that ruin a good
several
story.
years ago, I believe before it was officially recorded, there was somebody right around 50 as well. Um, but anyway, yeah, our official number was 48,700. Oh boy, I used to know that $725.27, I believe. But anyway, so yeah, luckily we continued to fundraise through the end of Thon, and by the end of Thon, we did break the 50,000 mark, which was made possible solely by the passion of Penn Staters, and that was unbelievable. I mean, we started that campaign. We started that campaign with a pretty secretive goal of $30,000 because the prior year, the highest raising IDC raised 20,000, and we thought that the all-time record was 27,000. So we were like, let's get 30. And it was so funny. Like I was so hyper focused on getting $30,000. I made like all my passwords for anything Thon related. I made that. This is so funny. My dad's trying to fix lighting. If you've noticed lighting changes, he's just been moving a light around my face. He's working upstairs, but comes down every once in a while to change lighting. I
That's
think he
fun.
wants me to remove the hat, but my hair's growing in from thon. So, um, anyway, to continue, I forget where I left off. Okay,
Oh, you were
30,000.
focused on 30,000, your
Yeah,
passwords.
I was so focused on 30,000 because I thought that was a record, and then, as I said, I had a conversation with Regina and found out that it wasn't a record. So all of a sudden, the finish line had to be adjusted.
Right.
Um, and I mean, we poured everything we had into it, and luckily had a lot of support from the Penn State community. Ended up breaking 50,000 by the end of Thon. And you had a second part to the question. What was that? Can you remind me?
Oh, and then what was it like doing at least half of Thon as the Nittany Lion?
So that's the other thing. That was my goal. I wanted to do over half, and I didn't.
Okay.
Um, I gained a lot of respect for dancers. um, I thought that I'd be able to dance pretty easily, but I struggled. It was extremely draining, um, and yeah, I ended up probably in the high teens, maybe like 18, 19 hours or something, short of the 24 that I was hoping for. Um, but yeah, I mean that was still a lot. It was incredibly draining, but more than anything, so rewarding. Um, I went through a lot of peaks and and valleys, and energy, and I mean Sunday morning I was a walking zombie. Um, but then by the end of Thon, um, I was by 4 p.m. I was ready to go. Ready to go a few more hours. You can ask any of the executive committee that stood on the stage afterwards. I didn't want to leave because I knew that when I left and I went back to my room to change, that was going to be the last time I ever put on that costume. Um, and it was tough to come to terms with, but ultimately, ultimately, I fulfilled my mission, which the number was not. It wasn't about setting a record or setting like a certain like raising money. Even it was my ultimate goal with that with that last event that I did, was to create the biggest impact that I ever had. And with the combination of the amount we raised and the amount of time I did in costume, and I I think I did it. I am quite confident that my most impactful event was my last one, and knowing that I just came to accept it and took
Yeah.
off a suit, never to do it again.
Yeah. Well, you absolutely did make a huge impact. You used the platform of being the Nittany Lion to help so many people all along the way. You mentioned the peaks and valleys through Thon, and you mentioned how coming to the end of that, there was a reality. So you danced at Thon. I know you had to get to an exam on Wednesday, and and get that exam. Then you leave Happy Valley and you go on spring break, and then the coronavirus hits, right? The spring of your senior year, the last month and a half of time. Talk talk about that. Talk about kind of your thoughts and your feelings about all that, and kind of what went through your mind then and how you're thinking about it now.
Yeah, so that was and is really, really, really tough. So it's like it was particularly tough, for me because this was some time that I have looked forward to, um, for literally 3 years. Um, so when I was selected to be the Lion, I was selected as a freshman, and I was the second freshman ever to do so. Um, and the first one, unfortunately, didn't complete, his whole career. he ended up being Lion for about a year. So knowing that I had the opportunity to be the Lion for 3 full years, and that no student had ever done that before, um, I I wanted to end on my terms. I started in April, um, but I knew that I wanted to end with Thon as my last event. Um, so Thon happens in February. So I wanted to have the next Lion selected beforehand, so that I could go out with a big impact, with a big event as my last event, and that then I could actually be like a normal student and enjoy my friends for the last 3 months that I was, last
Right.
2.5 months that I was at school. Um, and I even, throughout my freshman, um, throughout my freshman, sophomore, junior year, specifically freshman and junior year, I was taking a lot of credits in order to lighten my senior year, so that my senior spring specifically, I would have 12 credits like I have now. And actually 3 of them are even independent study. So it's not like I have one meeting a week with a professor that I'm working with on the independent study, as opposed to a normal class. So I was prepping to have like this time just to embrace Penn State, like as a normal student. And so spring break comes, and I actually set up another thing. I always thought that it would be funny, well, not fun, but or not funny, but rather fun to be a cheerleader and actually be able to talk at games and yell and cheer and whatnot. So we were actually short cheerleaders. We had space for cheerleaders, at the men's basketball tournament, the Big Ten men's basketball tournament. Um, and since there was space for cheerleaders and most of the cheerleaders had spring break plans, I asked the cheer coach if I could go as a cheerleader, and he said, sure, if you're willing. So I found out about all of this coronavirus stuff on a bus ride to Indianapolis. And it was on our way out there that everything just started, like the world started falling around us. We were on a long, long bus ride. I forget what it was, 9 hours, maybe 8 hours. I forget. But we were on a long bus ride, and everything just started crumbling. Like all of a sudden we found out that like some schools were like canceling the week or two after spring break, and then the Big Ten tournament announced that there were going to be no fans.
Right.
And we were like, who are we cheering for? Like, so it was just really strange to watch things unfold. And when the original announcement came out that Penn State was going to be canceling like 2 weeks, for about an hour leading up to it, students on the bus were like excited because it like meant a longer spring break.
Right.
But after it actually happened, reality set in once again, and we were like, whoa, we're not going to be back at Penn State. We're missing a lot. And so, yeah, it was, I mean, I was the same way. I was like, sort of, I wasn't ever like hoping they'd cancel 2 weeks, but when they did it, my initial reaction was, all right, it happened. It felt like a snow day. And then personally, in under a minute, I was like, no, 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 no. I had so many plans. And I then realized, because a lot of the reaction, unfortunately, was that kids were like, let's go on another trip. Like, because flights were really cheap, and like, luckily I don't think many people ended up doing that because they realized that that wasn't realistic as well. But when I heard that reaction, it hit me again that like we weren't stopping at 2 weeks, that this was going to be the rest of my senior year. And I mean, I went through denial. I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that this was happening. And yeah, I mean, it's been tough. I can't deny that. I've been talking with friends as much as I can, and luckily it's been a lot. But there's just it's still I don't think it's gonna sink in to me until next fall that I'm just never gonna be a student at Penn State again. Like at least in the capacity that I was, like perhaps graduate programs or something. I
Right.
don't have plans for that now, but it's just yeah, that portion of my life just ended way too abruptly. But
Yeah, it went from being a snow day, to use your word, to from a snow day to an avalanche, right? I mean, it's just
mhm,
everything changed. And, while your student experience is ending, right, you realize this Penn State thing is a lifelong experience, right? Wherever you go, whatever you do, Penn State's going to go with you. And so, um, yeah, that's the great thing about this alumni network and about this experience is that it's portable, right? Wherever you go, it goes with you. Where you're listening to the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. We are here with the 52nd Nittany Lion, Zach Sowa. So, Zach, let's talk a little bit about what happens after May. You're a cybersecurity analytics and operations major. Where do you go after you graduate?
so I will be working for Deloitte as a cybersecurity consultant for government and public services clients. And I'll be working in Harrisburg, PA, which those of you who know me is my hometown. Harrisburg, PA is about an hour and a half from State College, and that was actually a very big influence in my decision. I had four offers across the nation, and ultimately, like I ended up taking like uh, I ended up kind of compromising on an offer for the location because it was, I mean, more than anything, it was really hard for me to imagine letting go of State College and the network that I'd created around State College um, so easily. And this is something that like my ultimate decision ended up being between Harrisburg and St. Louis, Missouri, and it was a connection to my family and the actual like Penn State community in State College that made it impossible for me to make any other decision. I plan on being back, and I already planned on being back as much as possible before this, before the coronavirus hit. But now it just makes it that much more important to me because, yeah, I just need to I need to make up for lost time. And when I come back and shoot at games and whatnot, which I mean that's another interesting possibility there that the season gets canceled or moved or whatever. Something that again I'm in denial about, but whenever I do come back, I will be cheering harder than I ever have. Whenever I do come back, I will be having more fun with my friends than I ever have.
Yeah.
Um, I will be embracing the Penn Staters more than I ever have. I will be like, there's more than anything, this has just reminded me how important it is to embrace every moment. And yeah, to be around Penn Staters and that community is such a blessing that I mean, I knew it my whole career, but I never knew it more than now. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so
All right. So on Coffee Hour, Zach, we've heard a lot of interviews with you, right? I mean, you do a great job with the media,
thank you.
hosting the Nittany Lion, right? But we like to give our audience a little something extra here, right? So this might be something that others haven't heard. So we're going to do a lightning round here. I'm going to say some things, and you have to pick one or the other, or you have to give like the first answer that comes to your mind. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sheets or Wawa?
Ooh, sheets.
Favorite spot on campus?
Lion Shrine.
TikTok or Snapchat?
TikTok.
Your favorite building on campus?
Old Main.
How about your favorite pizza place in State College?
Hot take, but Canyon.
And wow, that is a hot take.
Very hot take. It's
I
just
should have said before 10 o'clock.
honestly, like, okay, well, before 10 o'clock, I don't, East Commons. There you go. I had a meal plan.
Netflix or Hulu?
I don't have either.
Okay.
I don't, yeah.
I could see a Netflix series coming out with you, the Lion King.
That's actually hilarious.
Yeah.
I knew more about that reference.
Right.
But,
So,
but
how about your favorite
right
place to eat on campus?
now. What was the question?
Your favorite place to eat on campus?
Pollock Commons.
Oh.
No. Panda Express. Anybody who knows me knows that is by a mile my favorite.
Okay, S zone or roar zone?
S zone.
Okay, favorite Penn State sport?
Football is the obvious, but next would be wrestling.
Yeah.
I loved wrestling.
Yeah. How about Hints or the Hub?
Hints.
Hints. All right. Favorite creamery ice cream flavor?
Thon Golden Ribbon Ribble.
Okay. All right. Now, the next one we're going to do is just some word association. I say these words and kind of what does it, feelings or thoughts that it evokes. The Nittany Lion.
Symbol of our best.
Thon.
The kids.
FTG.
For the glory.
Yeah. Class of 2020.
Ooh. Gypped.
Okay. We are
Penn State.
Well, Zach, hey, I want to thank you for joining us this morning on the Coffee Hour. You are a star. You're going places. Like I said, the Penn State experience doesn't end in May. It's something that's with you for the rest of your life. And when they say the Nittany Lion is the symbol of our best, I can't think of a better person to represent our university than you. It's been great getting to know you, and we usually open it up for some questions here. So if you're willing to hang on a little bit,
You bet.
we're going to open it up and let some other folks ask some questions. If you have a question for Zach, please put that in the chat, or at least indicate that you want to ask a question in the chat. And then I will go ahead and unmute you. And I see that Randy Houston has a question. Randy, tuning in from New Jersey. Go ahead with your question.
Hey, Paul. Zach, how are you, man?
Hey, Randy.
Great to see you and great to hear your voice.
You too.
I have to say, without a doubt, one of the lowest points of my first year as president has been the way this year has ended, particularly for you and your fellow seniors. But definitely one of the high points of my first year as president has been going on the road and getting to know you and your partner in crime, Eric, and spending some time with you guys and befriending you guys. We've talked a lot about, some of your greatest memories as Nittany Lion, but what is your single greatest memory as a Penn Stater, just as Zach?
Just as Zach, the first thing that comes to mind was, like, looking back, it's not that special, but at the time it was so big to me. The whiteout my freshman year against Ohio State, upsetting them and really starting, to use this term for the 10th time in this interview, an avalanche of the comeback of Penn State. Like, our other sports never really lagged behind during the I'll say the dark years of Penn State football when we were going just over 500. But yeah, my freshman year, it just stuck out to me so much because after we lost our second game of the year to Michigan, and we got absolutely pummeled by Michigan, we lost in one of the ugliest football games I've ever seen against Pitt. And then in our fourth game of the season, we were 2-2, getting absolutely wrecked by Michigan. And one of my best buddies at the time said to me, "Bro, I just wish I went to a school that had a good football program, like Texas." And then he, that day, sold his Ohio State ticket to go home. And yeah, I mean, being at that game, screaming louder than I ever had, I gave myself a horrible, horrible headache where I had to like squat down in the crowd just to get away from the noise. And to beat Ohio State, rush the field, I mean, I grabbed grass. I held it in my dorm for until I was selected as a Lion, because it was only at that point that I realized that grass wasn't going to be that special to me anymore. But yeah, that stuck out a lot as Zach.
Yeah, it's a great one. Thanks, Zach.
All right, Zach, we have a question from Wendy Egger. Wendy, go ahead with your question.
Hi, Zach. I am a faculty member at one of the Commonwealth campuses, and I was just wondering, what is the conversation you have with your faculty members? You know, is it full disclosure up front, like, "Hi, I'm Zach, I'm the Nittany Lion," or are you pretty much under the radar until you have to kind of play that card?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. This is personally, I was more so the second. I was encouraged by the prior Lion to full disclosure right up front, but I feared like being treated differently. Like I like to be pushed, so I would always try to start a semester and not tell professors, so that if for whatever reason they like treated me any differently, that it wouldn't affect that. So that I'd really I'd put my best foot forward in that class and only pull that card if I absolutely needed to be. If I went on a string of like travel, or for example, the whiteout this year, like when College Game Day came, I put in 82 hours as a Lion. Not all in costume, but like in preparation and everything. But 82 hours on top of classes it's absurd. So in a case like that where I absolutely like need some understanding, that's when I would be like, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier, but I've been doing this and I balance this much." And typically what they say is like, "Wow, I'm impressed you've been doing as well as you have thus far. Sure, like take an extra day on this assignment or whatever. Like, really appreciate you telling me. Now just like let me know if this ever comes up again." That's not every professor. Some are like, "No, that means nothing to me." So it's kind of a roll of the dice, but that was my personal preference.
So Susan Robinson from New York City has a question for you. Zach, go ahead, Susan.
What advice do I have?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you can ask it.
Sorry about that. I put it in the chat, but you talked about your career starting at the blue-white game, and your successor doesn't have that opportunity. What advice do you have for him, and how can he have the kind of career as the Nittany Lion that you've had?
Yeah, that is absolutely, it's been a big concern and something that I've been talking about with them. I'll make it a gender neutral pronoun. So yeah, I have been in contact with them a lot, as you can imagine. Lots of training, lots of advice, and they expressed a lot of concern that, hey, like, I won't have the blue and white game to do this. I'm just going to be thrown into stuff. And luckily they actually have as I said, I started in April, and I believe the blue and white game was my like 10th event or something, but the other ones were much smaller. They have already done a few basketball games and a few other events. Like they have more events under their belt than I had, and the basketball games were pretty big games as well. Also, like I have the utmost faith in them. They're gonna do great, but their biggest concern is like, what if I don't know what to do? And I let them know that hey, it's gonna be all right. Your ultimate feelings will be focused on what do I do next, and it's gonna feel like everything just flew by. But ultimately, there's gonna be a lot of people there to help you. I mean, I personally plan to be back when the football season starts again, and that's the only real concern. It's will I know what to do when football season comes? And I'm hoping to be back. I'm hoping, if need be, that I could even get like a pregame pass just to tell them, hey, go here, I'll meet you here. Go here, I'll meet you here, do this, etc. And I mean, either way, whether I'm there or not, there were people throughout my whole career that would hold my hand through it all until it became second nature. So it's gonna be all right. But I feel for them.
So, Zach, we just have a couple minutes left with you this morning. A couple quick hitters here. First question, would you ever welcome a woman as the Nittany Lion?
Absolutely. That's exactly why I made that gender neutral pronoun. It's to not disclose the gender of the current one.
Absolutely. So, Zach, I'm sorry, Rob Hacker looks forward to playing cornhole with you and your dad and your brother Tim, but he wants to know, have you ever been starstruck by meeting a celebrity? Besides
So actually, the one time I was probably most starstruck was I don't know if I should even be saying this, but at a bar in Dallas after the Cotton Bowl, I believe.
Right.
Johnny Manziel was just at the bar, and so I was singing a song they played a song from Drake, literally about Johnny Manziel, and I looked like through some people and made eye contact with Johnny Manziel, and my jaw just dropped, and he just chuckled and nodded.
Well, unfortunately, it's not breaking news that Johnny Manziel went to a bar. So, so Clarabelle has a question for you. Clarabelle had the chance to work with you on the fun holiday video for Penn State World Campus, the one that was like James Corden's Street Theater. You made such a huge impression on their team, just how professional you were. Can you share what many may not realize? How hard is it to always stay in character?
Honestly, not hard at all. It's like flipping a switch. It was for about the first week, but after about a week, it's a completely different character. Flip a switch, think like a 5-year-old, and act on it. It's
Yeah. Mike McHugh from New York City wants to know how hot does it get in the suit? I would imagine that you need to kind of manage the heat, manage kind of the, listen to your body a little bit about the amount that you're sweating during a game. Kind of talk about the suit and how hot it gets and how much you sweat.
Yeah, it's about 35. They say 35 degrees warmer than whatever it is outside. I sweat a ton.
Yeah.
Probably lose 10 to 15 pounds of water weight throughout a game. Luckily, replenish a lot of it, so I'm not 15 pounds lighter. Typically around 10 pounds lighter, but yeah, drink lots of water, take breaks when need be. But yeah, it's a lot.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Zach, we want to thank you for joining us this morning. Like I said, I can't think of a better person to represent Penn State as the symbol of our best than you. Thanks for all you've done in service to Penn State, and we look forward to following you after your time here as a student to see all the great things that you're going to accomplish in your career. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Paul.
And thanks to everyone else for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Coffee Hour with the 52nd Nittany Lion, Zach Sowa. Thanks again. Thanks for coming out. You can hear and check out more of our events at alumni.psu.edu. Go out there to our events page to see all the virtual events that we are hosting to help get you through your quarantine. Until next time, we are
Penn State.
Man, that was awesome.